What's up, everybody? We're back here for another episode of the Level Up Your Life podcast, and we got a special guest, Andres Mendez. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Doing good, man.
Good
to be on.
Yes, excited to have you on. I appreciate you, man. Over the past year or so, maybe not even a year. It feels like it's only been a couple months, but about a year that we got to know each other, and I've got tremendous respect for you and what you've done in your young career, and you're really just a marketing madman. And you're really you one thing I have massive respect for you on is the fact that you're always hungry to learn and connect with people. It's not about trying to make the sale and get me to be a consulting client, but really you just want to like talking about marketing.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really enjoy talking to you about it, because I don't have very many people that want to talk to me. More often than not, when you talk to a marketing person, especially somebody that's as talented as you are, there's always a sale at the end. They're just trying to find some sale, but you just truly passionately love what you do. Or at least from my perspective, I think you do. And so excited to have you on, excited to dive into your story. I don't know a ton about your backstory. I know about some of it, but, excited to learn more about it today. So, fill in our audience, let them know a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and how you kind of got to this position right now.
Awesome. Well, first I want to say thank you for saying all those good things. That means a lot. Second, I think, I'm from Turlock, California, 15 minutes away from here, from Modesto. Went to Pittman High. I went to Stanislaus State for 2 years. And actually, something that a lot of people don't know about me, I went to San Diego State originally, and then ended up coming back during that first semester.
Cool.
Came back, kind of figured out how to get to Stan. Did that for 2 years. Was trying different majors, trying to kind of figure out what I liked, because I was always heavily involved in sports and didn't really think about career path beyond sports or anything like that. I mean, you're a kid, you don't think about that. And so tried business, art, and I was somehow found I found film, because it was during the I'm Schmacked videos for college, and me being a college student was like, okay, I could do that. That's not that crazy. Got a GoPro, and then I was like, I want to change my major to video production, and I found Northridge and Sac State that offered it. And then I had a buddy of mine that was transferred to Sac State. I was like, perfect, I'll just go to Sac State. Graduated there in 2 years, so I graduated in my 4 years of college. Worked out in Sac, took a couple of internships, and worked part-time here in different companies, just trying to taste and see what I liked, what I was good at, what I wasn't good at. And worked full-time out in Sac for, I think it was 2 years, year and a half. And then ended up recently, that's when we connected, is when I moved back. During that time when I was thinking I could commute to Sac and live here, I got an opportunity at Visit Modesto and to handle their marketing, and took that opportunity and have been doing that ever since, and just trying to grow and learn.
Nice, man. And I'm excited to see your career grow, especially now that, getting to meet you coming back into Modesto or in the Central Valley. But, for you you said it, you love to taste things. You're constantly trying things. You're in San Diego State, then Stanislaus and Sac, and you really are chasing things that you enjoy. And so often, especially when going to college, many people are like, oh, well, my parents want me to be this.
Yeah.
Or, well, I think I'm going to do this because it makes you the most. But you chased something that you enjoyed, and that's why you are successful at it and enjoy the process of learning and talking about it. And it's probably like how sports were. You enjoyed talking about sports when you played sports.
100%.
The same thing, when you enjoy what you do for a living, you enjoy conversating and talking and learning, and it almost doesn't seem like work.
Yeah,
because it's something that you're actually hungry to learn and to gain knowledge and to collaborate and to associate with other people that are in that same industry. So that's awesome, man. So you graduated from Sac State. You got in. You talked a lot about internships. Mm-hmm. So I talk to people a lot that want to be entrepreneurs, and I think one of the greatest ways to expedite the learning process is to go learn from somebody that's great.
Yeah.
What was your experience like doing internships? Were they all more or less in film, or did you do other internships prior to deciding to get into film?
Yeah, so really every part-time job or internship was in video production or some kind of design. My first part-time job in video production, because I was kind of just doing the GoPro stuff, and was at ASI at Stan, and they were hiring for that position. that wasn't my major. Yeah. All I had were a bunch of GoPro videos, and I could basically say oh, I know the softwares. And I always had the mentality that basically as long as I could get the interview, that I'm good. And then I think there's always been times where I didn't get a job, but I just kind of didn't think about it too much. Yeah. And so they've all been video based, but it was always to learn something at that organization. So like if I was gonna do video, I wanted to ask about new business development. I wanted to ask about like account managing. Like if I was at ASI, I wanted to learn from the person that kind of ran the ASI department as a professional and see like, is that something I see myself down the road doing? And then I had fun with the video stuff too. But I was always kind of just, what can video give me access to that I maybe would have to go a more traditional route? Because like I said, like when I really dropped out of San Diego State during that short period of time, I think goodness, like even then, I don't know how I thought ahead to be like, I'll apply to stand as a first-time freshman, and then I'm like, cool, like I'm good, I'm back on track, you know. But I knew that having that instability there with school basically took away some opportunities. So how can I get creative to create my own opportunities where I can't just put my resume in? Because at that time in my sophomore year of college, my resume wasn't, I didn't go to University of Michigan, right? Like I didn't, I wasn't the president of my fraternity. Like I didn't do any of that basically gave me leverage. So I was like, what else would give me leverage? Video, I was always like, I had a knack for it, and that was kind of my leverage. Like I can create this content, and then I felt like as a person, I was like, I always felt like I was like a good person. So I felt like that would kind of take me and give me, certain opportunities. And so that's kind of like what my outlook was on internships. And
nice.
I did that.
And I mean, I love how you talk about, you ask yourself questions.
Yeah.
And like, how can I get creative with this? How can I, create a better opportunity? And I think often it's the questions that we ask ourselves which dictate the results that we get from our lives. Yeah. And so often we're asking other people questions. Well, how do I grow? How do I do this in my career? When you're like, all right, how do I strategize this? How do I do this? And that's why you're able to make the moves that you're able to make. And you're what, 25? 25. Okay, sorry. 25. Apologize. 20. I said 24. Well, yeah. But I mean, you're having a lot of success in your career, and I mean, you've obviously been having success in your career at an early age. And I think it's that questions that you ask yourselves that help you dictate these outcomes. And you've obviously worked for some successful people and been around those people. Well, those people don't have just average people around them. They want people that are asking those types of questions. So I really, I'm sorry, I'm going to dissect certain things you say, because I think there's importance in asking yourselves questions. And often, I know for myself that, I ask myself the most challenging questions. Yeah. I don't want somebody else I want other people to challenge me too, but you should be challenging yourself. Yeah, exactly. And that's how you grow mentally and in your career. So, sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, I would just say 100%. Like, just because I think you have to self-evaluate. I mean, you do it in school when you're looking at if you get a C or an F, like, okay, well, why did I get a C and an F? I mean, like, you obviously did something that didn't get you that A. Same with like work. If you flopped on a project, why did you flop? Like, I think it's kind of like, I always kind of looked at it with my personal life the same way. Like, if something went wrong, why did it go wrong? If something went right, why did it go right?
Well, dissecting it, speaking of, before the podcast, we're talking about David Goggins. Yeah. And everybody's favorite superhuman. And he talks about that, like what would happen when he was going through BUD/S and these different programs where he would have to self-evaluate like immediately afterwards. And he talked about how he failed this pull-up contest, and he started like dissecting it, and he was like, okay, I was overly confident here, I didn't check my equipment here. And there's a lot of power in actually taking the time to look at why you got the results that you got, 100%. Because otherwise history repeats itself. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And so that you're one of the first people that I've talked to that at an early age, like whether you know it or not, you're talking constantly about problem solving. And I often say that you get paid in direct proportion to the problems that you're able to solve. And at an early age, you've been solving problems in either whether education or your career or different things, or your life path. And so it's really powerful that you do that. And whether you're a problem solver, you've been solving problems. And so I like to pinpoint certain things, and when people are telling their story, that I'm like, that's really powerful right there, because I think people are looking for that one nugget that you're saying, and sometimes something like this will go completely overlooked. And they're looking for that one, like, how do I market my business this way? Well, it's not about marketing your business. It's about how do you creatively, or how do you create a strategy to solve that consumer problem? 100%. And that's how you build your marketing strategy. But it starts with solving the problem rather than just being like, I think this is a good piece of creative with a great caption, and that's going to sell. No, that's not it.
I think you put it perfectly. What problem are you solving?
Exactly.
Whether it's like the actual like at itself, like whether it's if you're talking marketing, like somebody's having trouble with marketing, how are you solving their marketing problems, or as a business, if it's revenue, how does your service solve that problem of revenue, or employee like training, whatever it might be. There's always problems to be solved.
Exactly. And I know we talked before too about how in this time with Corona, and I know we're jumping all around because we're not talking about your timeline of career, but like during this time of Corona, that I think right now is one of the most important times of problem solving, because often people are like, I got this problem, like it's the government's fault, it's this fault, it's Corona's fault. But it's like, we're not sitting down, okay, what can we do about this situation, and how can we solve this? How can we get better? How can we navigate it? How can we pivot to other platforms, or catch up to 2020 and get our digital side of the business up, or whatever. It all starts with problem solving, and that's gonna be the number one characteristic of a successful person, is the ability to solve problems.
Yeah, and I feel like there's always a solution. Granted, there might not always be great solutions, but there's always some kind of solution
100%.
To something. I mean, I think I always just related to kind of like work, right? Like, if you're getting paid, if you're in a job and you're getting paid for something, like, you have to figure it out. And that's kind of just part of life, part of work, And I think life in general is kind of like that, because if you do it for work, why can't you do it for anything else?
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the way it should be, right?
Yeah.
Everybody should be a problem solver. So hopefully, because of this podcast, more people will take on that characteristic of becoming more of a problem solver. So, so you went through, you got into film. What led you into more of the marketing aspect? I know you said that you enjoyed, the whole advertising side of the business, but what went from film? I mean, I don't see you with a camera anymore in your hands. How did that transition happen? What led into that?
Yeah. So really, my first, at least, interest in advertising, and really more so business, was like I came across Gary Vaynerchuk, and this was also during the time when Casey Neistat, who was a vlogger, was really popular. But yeah, Gary would kind of just like caught my attention. He was like obviously super loud, business guy, and there was, I think, during this time, I think it was 2014, 2015. So there was, this is like, I feel like, at least to me, when the internet was young enough to where there was a lot of those, like fake entrepreneurs that were flashing like the Rolex and like all that, right? And they were like claiming like, oh, make money hell like super fast. And me being a college student, like I would, buy these courses, like it would be like this course, and I'd take it and I'd be like, I literally could have Googled all of this. Yeah. And so what I liked about Gary was that I started kind of dissecting it and being like, okay, I'm not sure what this guy's business is that's selling me this like guru of a life, Yeah. And then when I looked at Gary, I was like, oh, he has the advertising agency. Okay, cool. Who are his clients? Oh, they're like the biggest brands in the world. Obviously, this guy's pretty legit. So then from there, I think I was in my junior year of college, and I was working part-time at Sac State at that time. And I was working at the admin building, and I kind of was just like, man, this is kind of boring. Like, I'm not really liking it. I kind of saved my money, so I was like, I don't really need to work. My rent was super low, and I put my 2 weeks in and I quit. And then I'm kind of sitting there. I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. Like, I have some time before summer, and so then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to get this internship in New York for Gary. I know I'm not gonna be able to contact him, but I'll figure it out. And at that time, I had a roommate who's actually used to be like a good friend of mine, which is an interesting guy, so he kind of always like razzed me, saying like, oh, you can go work for that guy in New York, whatever, and that for me, that was just kind of like, I'm going to show you. Yeah. And so that's all it was. Like, I think there was no like, outside of just like proving him wrong and saying like, I kind of want to live in New York for a little bit and see what that's like. Yeah. There was no other motivation. That was about it. And so I was like, okay, well, time to kind of get to work. So I was like, Gary's going to be too hard to get in contact with. Let's probably D-Rock. I'm doing film and video. I can, I think, I had only heard Gary mention the work for free thing like one time, but I'm like.
2015, that was early Gary. Now I mean, that's kind
of thing, right? Like work for free. Yeah. So I was just like, okay, I've saved up some money. If I have to crash on a couch, I'll do it, whatever. I don't really care about getting paid. I just want to be there and kind of just experience it. Yeah. And so I hit him up on Instagram, like on comments saying, hey, if you need like a film guy, just help you out. Let me know. I'm going to be in New York this summer. Like, I didn't even know I was going to be there. I was just like, I'm going to be in New York this summer. Love it. And he kind of just, like, said, email me. And
this is Gary or D-Rock?
D-Rock. Okay, sorry. D-Rock. And
I mean, this is early D-Rock, too, so he didn't have a lot of followers.
Yeah, so he just, like, emailed me. Yeah. And me being a college student, not putting my problem-solving hat at that moment, I was like, well, what's his email? And so I was just like, all right. So I said, okay, what's your email? And he didn't respond. I was like, okay. And then so I kind of like over the course of 3 months, kind of try to like and comment and say like, basically just kind of offer, say that like, oh, do you guys have any internships? And then finally one day I saw he was like, oh, I'm adding people back on Snapchat if you add me today. And I was already following him on Snapchat. And so I just unfollowed him and followed him. And then he followed me back and I was like, okay, cool. Like I got a notification. So I went to like my hard drive, put a video on, and I Snapchatted it. I was like, hey, do you still need that free intern? I did like 3 like 10-second clips. I was just like, do you need that intern? Check out my work. Yeah. And he's like, okay, email me. And he gave me his email. And then I emailed him. Still didn't hear back for like 3 weeks. And then I followed up. I was like, hey, like, I just basically just followed up. I can't remember what I said. And then he replied, and it was kind of vague. So then I was just like, hey, well, I got offered another internship in New York. Do you still need that free intern? I'd rather intern for you for free. And then he's like, yeah, he contacted the HR person, and then we hopped on a phone interview, then HR after. But he's like, okay, do you have time for a phone interview? And it was like during a class, and I was like, okay, so I left my class. And he was asking me just traditional questions, right? What's your 5-year plan? I didn't really know. I was just kind of just like trying to get through the interview and try not to be nervous too, because I was just like, dude, this is really happening. And ended up getting a paid internship. So long story short, I got a paid internship. And for the summer, ended up flying out. I didn't know where I was living until like 4 days before I flew out to New York. I ended up getting a dorm at NYU dorms, but I didn't get confirmed on that till like 4 days before. And so I kind of just took 2 suitcases and I went. And then when I started, it was just like the world of like advertising, especially in Manhattan, was like,
can only imagine,
so cool. Like it was just like everybody was our age, and like, and I know I'm a little bit more like dressed up because of like work and stuff, but it was like more like casual, and like the energy was just unreal. Like anytime Instagram came with like a new update or new feature, it was like buzz, like all over Slack, like, hey, how do we use this? Or like any news, it was just like, how do we basically hop on this as advertisers? And then if anything negative happened, like, okay, we need to pull this ad. But it was like very like quick. And so I guess like long story short, that's kind of like how I ended up there. And then once I was there, it was just kind of a crash course on advertising and then the business world of New York. And I think getting exposure to the interesting like old money, that dynamic too, and how that works. And then really just like seeing how competitive it is in New York. There was a kid from Sweden that runs an account called Dunk, and he got an internship there at that same time. And I remember not Gary, but I think Tyler or D-Rock gave me like his phone to like get his Snapchat when he was doing Ask GaryVee with Fat Joe. Okay. And I was just nervous as hell, so I was like, fuck, I don't know what to post. I don't want to fuck anything up. Like, this is Gary's phone. Like, what if I hit a text? I don't know. I was just thinking too much. And so that kid, Dunk, he would just like, here, give me it. Yeah. And just no hesitation, just started taking like, and it's something so small, but it was just like, dude, I'm not gonna let anybody take, like, I had it like, I was holding like the CEO's phone, like, and I hesitated. So I got my opportunity kind of taken away, that small opportunity. Yeah. And that was kind of just the whole summer. It was like, if you didn't jump on something, somebody else was waiting in line to jump at it. Like, if you hesitated or were like not sure of yourself, like somebody else was sure of themselves, and even if they messed up, somebody saw that they were at least sure of themselves, you know? And I feel like for as much as I think, sometimes I could be like unsure of myself, and that taught me a lot to just be like, even if I'm wrong, that's better than hesitating, because then somebody else is going to be there to kind of just take that opportunity from you. And so I kind of just got exposure to that environment. Work culture is different. It's fun, but you're working longer hours, and it kind of is expected, you know? Like, it's, if you show up at 8 a.m. and leave at midnight, you're just like everybody else on the team. You're not like any different. So I think that was super interesting. And I ended up getting 2 one-on-one sessions with Gary at the end of my summer, but that was like not that I had to, but you know, the interns are only paid to go 9 to 5. Outside of that, it's to be on your free will. And it's a bunch of 21 to 22-year-olds, right, that are interns. So they're in New York for a summer. They want to go party and go experience New York, right? But I was like, okay, I'll just stay late with the team and see what happens. Yeah. And with that, we still went to happy hours, but now you're getting happy hours with the full-time staff that are actually like working there professionally. Yeah. And then you get invited to go play basketball at 5 a.m, right? And then so you go play basketball. I suck at basketball. I kind of could just run around like I'm just athletic, but I can't shoot for anything. And so I was just like, okay, whatever, I'll go, you know? And ended up getting close with Tyler Schmidt during that summer. And towards the end of it, I was like, hey, man, is there any way you could fit me like 2 minutes with Gary. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to say. I just want to say what's up, you know? And he's like, yeah, like, I'll fit you in. It kept getting pushed back. And we were moving offices from Park Avenue to Hudson Yards.
That's where they're at now, right? That's
where they're at now.
The big old one, yeah.
Yeah. And so we were at Park Avenue, and we were just getting things packed and moving, and Gary was in the office, and D-Rock just came up to me randomly when I was hanging out with, like, some of the coworkers just hanging out, and he's like, hey, Gary has some time, like, go say what's up and have your meeting. And I was like, I don't know, I'm not ready, you know? And he's like, just show him this video. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I showed him a video, and we kind of just talking, but it was like, he was just, like, super calm, like, relaxed, like, just a genuine person, but just, like, it's like genuinely listen to you so hard that you're kind of just like, I don't know what to say now. Like, I feel like, you know, I thought you'd be doing all the talking.
Yeah.
And so he kind of just asked me some questions of how I got there and a little bit about like my story. And then again, kind of the same thing, like nerves. He was taking off to go fly somewhere, and I forgot my phone on the table, and he was gonna mess with me. So he took my phone, and D-Rock like texted Tyler, because I was with Tyler like 3 hours later. He's like, hey, he has Andres's phone. Is he with you? And then he's like, yeah, he's right here. He's like, all right, tell him to meet me because we're about to hop on a flight. And so it was like this big old thing, like, just to get my phone back. And so that was kind of like my first experience with Gary. The second one, I think they just forgot to take it off the calendar. And, and I was like, okay, I'll just take it again before I leave.
Yeah.
But wow. Yeah, that kind of, I think, really gained the dose of just first building a personal brand, like on his level. That was super cool and interesting. And then really realizing, like, oh, okay, like, this is kind of the layout of it. You could do that. Yeah. Really, at that point, it just, like, how your team works well together. And then seeing really, like, oh, okay, when we were looking at basically the budgets of some of the big clients just to get, like, education on the business, it was just interesting to see the psychology behind marketing at that level. Yeah. Like, with GE, you were never selling, like, their actual products. You were selling the organization to bring the brightest minds into the organization. Or, like, if they were a B2B business and they knew that a certain executive was going to get promoted to make the decision on the actual purchase price between the B2B, they were already hitting him with advertisements on LinkedIn before he got the promotion, so that when he got the promotion, he was going to be doing business. Wow. So I think just, like, that kind of strategy was just, for me, it was just fascinating more than anything else. And I was like, this is really cool. I want to do something like this. And then it was kind of molded from there, and try to taste other positions within the field, because there's so many different, specialties within advertising that you can do.
Well, I think that was a super fun story. But that was super. I was like, wait, I'm on a podcast. That's right. I need to talk. But no, that was super cool to hear you break down that story. And I think for, like, a lot of people, Gary was the one that lit the fire under a lot of people to ask to go build a personal brand and to start to understand marketing in the current phase that we're in now. Yeah. And that was about the time that I got into Gary. It was actually because of Dunk. Well, I mean, I followed him. I started following Dunk first, and then I was like, who is this? Yeah. Who's this person? And then all of a sudden he said something. He was like, oh, this is Elliot. He runs Dunk. And I was like, yeah, that kid runs, and I think he was, like 18 years old.
He was 18, just turned 18, yeah.
And so that's kind of what led me in, because he was posting something on his Instagram story of GaryVee, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? And then my fiance showed me a video of Gary, and she's like, this is your type of guy. He swears like you. He's energetic like you. Like, you got to check him out. Yeah. And so it was cool to hear you talk about all this, because I'm like, I know those things. Yeah. Like, I remember those. And, like, so hearing the behind the scenes. But I think with marketing, it's like, it's funny when you're like, a business my size, like under the 50 employees, doing a couple million, like, there's a level of marketing there, but then there's, like, the 10 to 25 million brand. And then there's, like, the 100 million, then there's the, billion plus brand. And the strategy behind marketing it's not always transaction. Well, the transaction isn't always customers purchasing, but there is, like, a psychological aspect of marketing 100%. That's so much higher level than just a straight transaction of, run this ad, a customer purchases. It's not just a funnel. There's such a high level IQ that goes behind really top level marketers that is outside of the realm of most people. And so it's crazy that you got that experience so early on. Yeah. And I mean, I can only imagine in Manhattan, like, the agencies that are in that area. I mean, Hudson Yard is the the place to be in New York. And so I mean, that must have been such a great experience to see that firsthand.
Yeah, it was. And I think really, I kind of like the coolest thing for me, like on my end, like work wise there, was seeing what's possible. I know you talked about it when you go to LA. But even seeing like what Dunk was able to do at 18 years old, you know, he was taking a pay cut to go intern for Gary, you know, with what he was freelancing with his Instagram account. Yeah. And but the value prop there was obviously much bigger than a dollar sign in that moment. But as an 18-year-old kid, he had the IQ to say, you know, the dollar doesn't matter for this year. I'm only 18. I'm gonna go, you know, work in his team. But just seeing like what he was able to do just off of one Instagram account and see like how he kind of dissected things and how he navigated networks to, you know, I think by the time I left, he was just getting started to do some social media work for an NBA team, and you know he's 18 years old. Yeah. And I think it was that year, or maybe the year after when it actually got said and done. But nonetheless, just to see kind of what's possible, like what, you know, all the different stories that people had, like it was just like, it was just really cool and like super inspiring. You're like, oh shoot, like this is possible. Or you see too, like, I think what was interesting to me was like a little bit more of the practicality. Like you think like, oh, okay, especially coming like from the Central Valley, like it's smaller. And if you say like, oh, okay, at least you know, my age group at I was 21. So I know there was some kids that were in college that would say like, oh, like, you know, I'm entrepreneurial and things like that. And then like, you know, when in that environment, it's like, oh, you are? Well, you do realize that all the people working, like this person working here that gets paid pretty well also has a side business that does like 3 times of what you think you're doing entrepreneurial wise. And then you're like humbled really quick. You're just like, oh, okay, you're talking that big game. Like back it up. Yeah. I don't talk shit, you know?
Well, and I know I was.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. You can continue.
No, I was just saying that because I think that's like something that's common when you're like 8, you know, just in your early 20s or 18, when there's a little bit of naivete to like practicality, right? Yeah. And you get it once you get older. But I think it was just like I said, that was just like a interesting exposure. We're just like, oh, okay, like, you know, if you're in a talk the talk, like walk the walk kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, if I look back at my 18 to probably 24, especially that range right there, probably my biggest mistake was not going and taking an internship or trying to go work for either a massive pay cut, free, whatever, to get the exposure. And there was, I was like, at the time, entrepreneur wasn't really the word that I would use. It was more like, you know, business owner. Yeah, I'm a business guy. You know, I don't work for people. Yeah, like that was what. I ain't like that. I'm not wired like that. Yeah. But it was like that was my ego speaking. Yeah. And it was really that I just didn't want to go have somebody else tell me what to do, but not, you know, going and working for somebody or interning for somebody that, even if it wasn't Gary's level, you know what I mean? Say, you know, the 5th degree level of GaryVee, you know, that person still has insight. They've done millions of dollars in the industry you want to be in. If you want to cut the learning curve down, go work for somebody. That 1 year or 2 years is something that will massively change the rest of your life. Yeah. 100%. And so often people like, I mean, I'll have people talk to me about, you know, hey, do you know anywhere that's looking to hire, especially like programmers here in the Central Valley? You know, there's not very many jobs here. I'm like, well, you know, why don't you go take an internship? Oh, I can't take a year of not getting paid. But then, you know, 2 years later, you talk to me like, so what's up with that computer programming? You know, I work over here at, you know, whatever business. And you're like, are you doing computer programming? No, I stopped that. Well, you went to school to get this, but and it was all because you wouldn't take that 1 year of internship that would have got you into the career that you wanted to be in. But instead, you just took the money. Yeah. And, you know, now you're stuck at that level. Yeah. But because of that exposed you to something that, I mean, dude, it put you on another level. And then on top of it, I mean, to be able to say that you worked for VaynerMedia, even as an intern, that there is a resume booster, and it's something that really sets you apart from so many people. I remember seeing your profile, and because you DM'd me, and I was like, who is this guy? And it was private. Yeah. But then I'm like, Gary, D-Rock, Tyler, like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
You know, and it was like immediately then I read your message. I think I saw that you follow Brolin or something.
Yeah.
Brolin. So that was like okay, Brolin, who is this guy? He's like,
Yeah,
bro, I went to high school with him.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, dude, he worked with GaryVee and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And like, you know, but it was like it gives you that pass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not that you wouldn't be sitting here, but you know, but when you see it, you're like, oh shit, who is this guy?
Yeah.
You know, and so there's so many, not only just from the experience, but also positioning yourself for future. And you know, I mentioned it the other day to a client of mine that I was going to be sitting down with you. It's like, yeah, this guy, you got to meet him, and it was telling him about you and what you're up to, and I was like, yeah, he did an internship with GaryVee, and like immediately perk up, like, we love Gary, you know, and so it's you took advantage of every opportunity, but additionally backtracking it. You put yourself in that position by, you know, looking for those opportunities to get in contact with D-Rock and to navigate your way into getting that exposure, and that probably cut your learning curve down. I mean, exponentially. We probably can't even put a timeline on it because your career probably wouldn't even be where it's at, or even doing what you're doing if it wasn't for that experience.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that not only did it cut, like, I think the learning curve, I think what interning for really, I think there needs to be more practicality on business owners that say aren't even on that level of Gary, right? So yeah, Gary has a lot of success and a lot of notoriety, and he's a study. He is who he is. But the business owners in our local community, or even in SAC, even in LA, that you know are able to have a good life building a business, is tough, or else everybody would do it. You know, so if you think you're entrepreneurial, go intern for somebody that's already doing it or has been doing it. You know, and you can learn if either A, you're cut from that cloth, or B, you're like, oh, you know, that stuff seemed cool, but he had somebody on his staff that did this that was like really interesting. I'm gonna go learn more about that. Yes. And so, but if you don't give yourself those exposures or kind of taste to see if like that's something that you want to do, then you won't get exposure to the thing that actually leads to what you're actually good at. Because the reality is, in a work environment, like if you suck, then you're not gonna get hired, and you're not gonna be bring business in. And so the fact is that business owners that have stayed in business for years and years are good at what they do. And and I think not being a GaryVee but having a successful business is still a huge feat. Like, and I think people need to kind of I think in certain fields people need to realize that and kind of see like, okay, like there's a lot of like really studs in business that are really in your local community that you just would never think because they're not in New York or something. Yeah. And then again too, like maybe it's the gateway to actually something that you're even more passionate about than what you thought you were passionate about.
Absolutely. Wow. We're gonna need to make a microclip of that one. That was good. That was great. No, I mean, there's certain things that along your story that I really resonate with because those were mistakes that I made or short-sightedness that I had. Whether it was the ego of not wanting to work for somebody because I do it myself. It was a lot that I didn't want to learn from somebody because I'm going to figure it out the right way. But it was like, it's not that you can't figure it out. It's just going to help sharpen your tools. Or like you said, which is a huge point that I didn't even think of, is maybe you'll find out that it wasn't for you and that this thing was for you.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it from the very fact, like at the end of the day, right, at a certain age, you're either doing what you're going to do or you're not. Like, granted, everything can change, right? But say that, right? You're never going to go work for somebody. At the end of the day, you're the one that's running your business. And then and there's nothing wrong with going to a job to go work and be passionate about that. But our careers kind of speak to those different mentalities, right? Like me going to want to go take an internship or work for somebody is kind of why I'm working within an organization, and then why you're running your own business, because the very thing that makes you like a successful entrepreneur is that what you're just talking about, right? And there's pros and cons to each, but that's also why you are who you are and I am who I am. Like, it just like we're different people, but I think me trying to be like you and run a business or maybe not work for somebody to kind of learn that, maybe I completely crash and burn and I don't do as well, don't find as much success, and then I'm just like frustrated. And I'm, like you said, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same result. Then I wouldn't be moving anywhere. Yeah. But maybe if somebody that's more entrepreneurial tried to work for somebody, wouldn't find that same success either. I don't know what the right answer is, but it's just like I think you could see a lot of the truth in DNA just based off the different thought processes. So.
Yeah. I mean, it really all comes down to your thought process and what you just said. Where you're doing something, you're not happy with it. And you're feeling frustrated. I think that happens a lot to entrepreneurs too, because they just jump into this career. They think they want to work for themselves. but they've never actually met somebody that works for themselves, never been exposed to it. And so they didn't get to either learn from somebody that's doing it successfully or even, see, hey, maybe that's not the life I want to live.
Yeah.
So then they get into it and then they feel like they have to complete it because they're like, they don't want to be a failure. They don't want to be these things. And it's because they never tried to get the experience or go out and learn from somebody. And a lot of it is dissecting our own DNA and looking at like, what are our strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah.
Where are we good, where we're not? But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is taking every opportunity that we have to get exposed to something and try it and just experiment and see, is this what I want to do? Is this not what I want to do? And, before this, I'm in solar, I'm food, cannabis, everything in between, freaking custom computers for companies. Like we did it. I've done it all. And people are like, why did you do all those different things? And I'm like, it was just what I wanted to do. I wanted to try it, and now I can check it off.
Why not? Like, why not do it?
Exactly. And a lot of people are, well, it's comfortable. This is safe.
Yeah.
This is what I've already done. But it's like, well, that might be the thing that you were meant to do. And because you've always done this thing and you stick with that, you pass up finding your true passion and happiness.
And safe's relative too. A lot of things that were safe, even what's going on right now, you easily get shaken up when something happens, So I think safe is a little bit, it's like relative, but it's hard to kind of shake that. But it's, I think you're 100% on.
Yeah. Wow, that was a great little segment right there. I'm happy you went so deep on it because there was a lot that I personally got out of it, and plus that was talking about from entertainment purposes. A lot of people that listen to my podcast love Gary, so that was cool to hear the inside of that. So post leaving Gary's, now you're really into marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Are you still focused on videography, and were you actually shooting content there, or were you just more or less editing and deploying it?
More so editing and deploying it.
Okay.
So really just kind of just taught me how to basically look at the same clip 100,000 times and try to figure out how to make different content out of it. It's just basically you get a hard drive of footage and then figure it out.
I was always wondering how that happened. I mean, there's so many questions that I'm sure I could ask you, but we'll save that for episode number 2.
Cool. Sounds good.
What was the GaryVee internship like?
Yeah.
But because we hear the 7 pieces of content a day or whatever, whatever Gary's talking, whatever new number he puts on it. But it's like, how do you create that? And so I was curious to, what you were doing behind the scenes. And so you're editing. Were you doing much actual, like, were you working specifically on a platform, or were you just creating content for all different platforms? Or
so basically the way it broke down was you had spreadsheets of basically YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and I know I'm like butchering because it's been a while, but basically you had a spreadsheet. We would have our copywriter D-Rock, Stefan, Andy, Sid, and other Andy, I think it's the designer's name, can't remember that. But they would all work on the spreadsheet and basically, say D-Rock edited a video that he like a vlog, then Brittany, who was a copywriter, would jump in and basically do all the copy, title it, make sure all the copy that's actually within the video is correct, and then put the description. I think Andy would jump in and maybe do SEO, but I'm not completely sure. But it was basically always a handoff, and then the designer would basically create the thumbnail. He would design the thumbnail. So you have all these different specialties to create really essentially one piece of content. But now when it's delegated between 8 people, you're able to pump up the amount of content because D-Rock's just doing, say if he's filming a vlog for the day, he's just filming a vlog, but then you have 3 other video editors back home at the office basically going to town just cranking videos. But you don't have to think about, I think when I was like a one-man team, like for Tyler McBroom, the CPA, it's tough because you got to, film, edit, copyright, be strategic too, to pump out the same amount of volume. As opposed to if you were just doing video. Not only in that, just doing the editing. No. You're just cranking out videos all day long for 8 hours. And then somebody's just doing the copywriting. Somebody's just doing, running the ads. Somebody's just doing the design on the thumbnails. And like something as little as thumbnails. Not only thumbnails, but, the first second on an Instagram video, just designing that. It's crazy. And then you have your interns basically going through the mounds and mounds of footage you have saying, go ahead and find new content. If it's good enough and Gary likes it, he'll post it.
Got it. Okay.
And that's kind of like.
So how much did that structure right there help you with working with Tyler or any of the other people where you've been kind of more of a one-man team, like learning structure at the highest level, and then taking it down to now you have to do all of it. How much did that help, or did it kind of set you up to have to try to relearn how to structure it as an individual?
Yeah, it helped a lot because I understood everything that needed to be done whenever they're like, where do you need help at? I was like, okay, I need help at this because this is how it would be done. And this is kind of what I'm struggling with. And then a lot of it was kind of, I had kind of to learn copy, like how do I actually strategically write copy, or how do I, do SEO, and how do I run ads? Like I didn't know how to run ads when I left. Like I saw somebody do it, but it's a lot different than actually going in and jumping into it yourself. And then a lot of times it was really like, okay, because of that experience, right, it gets me an in with either a company to work full time or to do 1099 work and figure that out. And then so when I would do the 1099 work, I would usually ask to do projects of things I didn't know how to do, so that I could basically learn how to do it and then prove that I could do it. And say that, okay, not like, not obviously when the client's happy, then he refers you to other business, then it's kind of like the same. It's the same thing as a GaryVee stamp, right? If you go to your best friend and say, this guy's super lights out, he like crushed it at this, then that immediately can get kind of added to your resume when it wasn't before if you've never kind of done it, right? So it's kind of just, it helped with the overall structure of when people would ask me if I needed help, but doing it yourself is tough.
Yeah, it's not any different. I mean, there's a lot more. I mean, it's so attractive to hear you talk about the thumbnail guy and this guy and the caption, because I mean Diego and I are pretty much a 2-man team on everything, and if not a 1-man team with him, and so it's like, wow, that's what it really sounds like at the highest level, of how people are structuring their team and the layout, and no wonder the content's so good. No wonder but it's always like you wonder what that behind the scenes is and how detailed it is. But taking it down, you got to see it at the fully spread out, and now you got to bring it all together. While it's challenging, you definitely learned it at the highest level, so it's probably making it even easier. So taking it from there, so you came back, you finished up school, right? Were you working during the final year of school? And
so I was working at a company called SkySlope, and they're a tech company. They make the real estate process paperless. I'm not sure if they're one of the first, but they do really well. And so I was working part time as a videographer there on their marketing team. It worked out because I got hired on because of the Gary thing when I emailed them about the job, and then I was doing a vlog for myself at the time, because I was just a college student. I was curious. I was on that high from New York, and I was like, I'm gonna try a vlog, and they had like other applicants come in that had their degrees already. They had more of your traditional video portfolio, but they really liked kind of my experience, and so I was working part time for them, and that was actually. Fast forward to today, the CEO of that company has probably made the biggest impact on my life, that more so than Gary, just because of who he is as a person. Kind of like I'm the oldest sibling, so he's always been like an older brother to me. And it's just cool. He's an awesome dude, and that was kind of, I didn't see it at that time because I was just working part time as a videographer and kind of frustrated. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew that I actually didn't know the CEO when I applied for the job at it, and it kind of just became a relationship, and now over the years, he's just an awesome dude. Super stoked to have him as a friend.
That's great. I mean, it's cool to be able to call him now your friend, And there's so many points for younger people or anybody to gain from this, because it's, don't burn bridges. You always keep relationships. And you said you didn't realize it at the time. But now looking back in hindsight, always 2020, and it's amazing how some people will just burn bridges, screw that guy. And they look back and damn, he taught me a lot. He actually cared, he was a really good person. He did these, he did it. And it's sometimes hard to go back and fix those. And, it's one of the greatest things. We talked about this, reputation and building your network. You're building your network. You don't even know when you're building your network sometimes, especially in the early days. 100%. And you can easily ruin your career and burn great connections down the road at that literally that 20 to 25 range. Is a dangerous point, because a lot of people are egotistical, and they're like, I'm going to do something bigger. I don't need you. And then they lose the person that could have been to help them open that door to that next chapter of their career.
100%, because I look at it as, it took me really graduating, kind of realizing how busy life can get, to realize how much it means when somebody allocates time for you, right? We all have busy lives, especially as you get older, and as your career moves on too, your time's valuable. If you're not at work, you want to spend it with your family and so forth. So if somebody's taking the time out of your day that has a busy schedule, like kind of really respect that and value it.
Yeah, no, I mean, just that alone is probably one of the things that I think once my mind started thinking in time rather than money, like just so much was created for me. I started, one, my own personal systems became much better.
Yeah.
But then two, like just literally I became more conscious of like, who am I spending my time with?
Yep.
Am I just taking an appointment just to, how am I going to get something from this guy or girl? Or is it, this is something that I actually want to learn from or invest my time into, whether it just be through like when we talk on Zoom, like I thoroughly enjoy that because I leave and I'm like, all right, I got to work harder. That would got me all pumped up, excited, and just sharing something that somebody's equally as passionate about as you, and just sharing that, but like there's a lot of people that invest their time into negative people or people that suck their energy away, and the only thing we can't get back is time. Yeah, 100%. And so the people I want to spend time with, that matters. And when you start to value your time more than money, man, that's really when I feel like freedom in life is created. Not necessarily time freedom, but freedom, because you stop focusing on just the exchange of money and chasing that dollar, and you start chasing the things that that matter most in life.
100%. I think I don't know. I think that's 100% on, or 100% on. I had an experience like recently within the past few weeks with like a friend where we're talking about like work and like going in as opposed to like taking the time off, and we had an interesting conversation where it was like this time was already pre-planned a long time ago to take it off, right? Is you going back into work, is it really worth your time? Like value your time off. Like your time off is important. Especially if you use say PTO and so forth, all that. But nonetheless, it's like, why do we get? I think sometimes we could get lost in not valuing our time away from that dollar exchange, right? Like that time off is worth something. Like you can't put a dollar amount on it if you really, really need it. And then sometimes that time off or that time doing whatever it is kind of springboards you onto the next thing because you took that break or you worked on that project you're putting off forever, Yeah,
and not to bash Gary in any way, but that him talking that story of like, I didn't take any time off in my 20s, and it's like, while that's true, I'm sure that's true, it can also be detrimental, and everybody's at a different place. He didn't start VaynerMedia till after
like 30 something.
Yeah, he was like 34, something like that. So it's like, okay, well, he was working for his dad's company, so that's why maybe he was working all the time. Maybe you're not doing that. Maybe you're working in a company, and there is now in my 30s, I'm like, my time off is super important, and I protect that. Yeah. And it's not that I want to just lay around and watch Netflix. Yeah. But that I spend time with my family and the people that I want to spend time with, and so and then when I come back, I'm more focused. Yeah. I'm more charged. My mindset is clear. Yeah. I'm not exhausted from this nonstop grind. And I feel like, before Corona, we were leaning towards that way, that I started to see content coming out from top entrepreneurs that 2020 is no longer the hustle time. It's the time for mental health and the focus on meditation and those types of things. And unfortunately Corona hit and everybody threw that out the door. Yeah. But I think it is leaning towards that, where we don't have to hustle all the time to get to where we want to go. And there is value in taking time to invest in just relaxing with your family, or maybe it is Netflix. Yeah. Fuck, it's not bad to watch 100%. Netflix. If you're working 7 or 6 days a week, grinding all the time, go home and enjoy. Sometimes you got to decompress some way, somehow.
100%. I think there's two things. I think as long as if you are like choosing to work all the time, like at least that you're enjoying it, right? If you're because I mean, as you get older, right, and you realize how many hours you work, you better enjoy it. So it's a lot of your life. So like. I think it's more so the context, right, of if you're hustling to get something that you think is going to satisfy you later, you could or could not be satisfied by that, because like if you're just doing it for the end result, not because of the process, then there's no guarantee that no matter how hard you work, if you're just chasing a dollar sign or just chasing a house or whatever it is, that thing's going to satisfy you, or that it's even going to happen because you're working hard, because talent comes into play. Scenario. Imagine if you started your business right at COVID and you just had a tough situation. It got tougher. So, like you said, like if it's not that thing you want to be doing all the time, don't feel guilty for taking that time to yourself. And actually, because usually the more you do things that you like, it either leads to happiness or there's some financial gain or career gain to it. But at least you're enjoying your time more than anything, right?
Yeah.
So it just kind of, I think it's, and I think too, a lot of it with social media is realizing the practicality behind the actual images that people are posting, right? Like, how practical is it to actually own a yacht and a big house and a Lambo? Like, that stuff's tough. Like it's tough to acquire. Like, I think people need to realize how hard it actually is.
Yeah.
And be practical about it and say, well, what if you never get it? Can you still be happy? And then if you know that you can never get it, okay, well, what can you do that isn't like, what's something that you actually do that brings happiness and fulfillment to you without the promise of the possibility of something, right? Yeah. And I think the more people have those conversations, the more people can be practical and maybe enjoy the right now instead of the idea of that thing later on.
Yeah. I don't know if you listen to the new Logic album.
I listened to Dad Bod, the song Dad Bod.
There's this one that I can't even start. I mean, you know more names than I do. I didn't know there was a song called Dad Bod. But there was one song where he has somebody talking at the end, and it sounds like it's an old clip.
Yeah.
But he talks about that that most people are not actually chasing having the item. It's status.
Yeah.
And it's having these things brings status, and then the people around you will be like, oh, he did it.
Yeah.
But it's not that actual happiness or fulfillment is the main goal. It's It's making sure that everybody around you knows you're at a certain level, but doesn't necessarily mean that you're at that level, happiness. And I made significantly more money than I make right now at GoFresh in other industries, and I fucking hated it. And I was miserable. And I was either drinking, smoking, or eating fast food. My unhealthiest days, I made some of the most money, and I was also not fulfilled.
Yeah.
I didn't have good people around me, and now while I make a great living, it's much it's so much more fulfilling. Yeah. So I have this team, and I have my family, and I have structure, and what we sell is actually something that I thoroughly enjoy selling. And and it's not about the nice car. And let me tell you, I've driven extremely nice cars, and nobody gave a fuck about me. Nobody gave any more fucks about me than they did when I drove a Honda Accord.
Yeah.
And nor did I think any better of myself when I drove that car, or less of myself. And so we chase these things that we think are going to bring us some sort of fulfillment, but we're not really chasing happiness or just chasing your passions, and that's the one thing that I truthfully, like, just going through this with you has been awesome and refreshing to hear, where you're like, I was trying to find, things. I was tasting, and that's life.
Yeah. 100%. I think,
or should be life.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's spot on. I think, it just, and it's exposure to different things. I think something that, and I never made anywhere near the amounts I think traditionally, like, people that I look up to make, and then they're like, oh, I'm gonna kind of reflect a little bit or kind of slow down, like, nowhere near that. But I think, when I was in the mortgage business, you see a different side, not that it's good or bad, but you see a different side of sales and business, where it's like, in my eyes, somebody could be making, I don't know, $400,000-$500,000 a year, and even sometimes upwards of that, and yet they're still insecure about how they look. And for me, it was mind-boggling. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Nope. Like to me, you're like, dude, you're crushing it. You're making a bunch of money. You can basically buy whatever you want, and yet you're concerned about the way that your smile looks or your clothes or something. And for me, it was just weird. Like, I was just like, okay, well, that guy's making a lot of money, and he's still insecure about that. This doesn't make sense to me. Like, there's this other dude another dude that's maybe older that makes 90 to 100, and he is sure in what he stands for. Doesn't really think about his appearance too much, and just confident, just knows who he is. And I always looked at that. I'm like, okay, that was more attractive to me, just as a So I was like, okay, cool. Then I'm just gonna think about that more. I just kind of adjusted, but it was always just interesting to think about it and kind of look at it and say, okay, well, if somebody can have so much money, and still be insecure, why is that? And there's people that have a lot of money that, I think too, that mentor that owns SkySlope, he's he does very, very well for himself, but he's very purpose driven. what's my purpose? How can I give back? How can I create nonprofits? Or even the way he thinks about money. Like there's one example that I knew in SAC that made a good amount of money, but thought about it and like making it, spending it, right? Like super fast, like buying Rolexes and things like that, right? And the way Tyler was thinking was like, okay, I got this opportunity to build my family name, and so his name's Tyler Smith. He's like, build my name, the Smith name. He's like, how do I make sure that my grandkids, are basically wealthy, that money's passed down? How do I build generational wealth? And he's actually, one of his mentors is Mike Zagaris here from PMZ. And so he was always just like thinking that way. He was thinking, how do I reinvest my money to build wealth? Like wealth and my name means something. I always thought that was super fascinating. Like he's like, I want Smith to mean something, like the Smith family. And it was just like interesting the way he even thought about that. And for me, whether I get to that point ever, I don't know. But it just to hear somebody talk about it in that way was just like interesting. It kind of just sparked some thoughts and kind of got the wheels turning a little bit of like, why does he think that way? And it just thinks a lot more long term, thinking about his family and then thinking about, how can he impact communities as opposed to I want to make a bunch of money to buy myself a bunch of stuff. It was like, okay, I have this opportunity to create that. I'm able to create a bunch of capital and resources. How can I deploy that to A, build that for my family, and then B, help with the community that I live in,
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that. It's funny that people often hear of successful people like your mentor and or your friend, whatever.
Yeah.
Tyler.
But yeah.
It was
older brother figure.
Yeah, older brother figure. And they'll go, oh, well, he's doing it for tax write-off purposes. And we associate that, like there's something evil about how they do it. Oh, they're malicious. Bill Gates, he's putting microchips in all of us. Like, don't worry, we've all got it right here in our phone anyways.
Exactly.
I saw it was like a quote. It was like, why are we concerned about Bill Gates trying to put a microchip in us when we paid Steve Jobs $1,100 for the one that's in our pocket?
Exactly.
That's the
100%.
truth. But people see it and they think it's malicious, but it's truthfully that people, when you're no longer chasing money and you're chasing what matters in life and making an impact.
Yeah.
Which I think there are evil people in every, no matter what income level. But a lot of times when you don't have it, you associate that you had to step on somebody or do something dirty to get it. Yeah. But it's no, these people work their ass off and they did it for the right reasons, and then they give back for the right reasons. And there's actual value. And then one of my favorite things during Corona is like, our business was getting bushwhacked and we saw a mass drop in sales. But this whole time, Diego and I are shooting content at hospitals, donating meals and collaborating with other entrepreneurs to donate to the food banks and doing these things that I was not focused on. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was very focused on our business, but it wasn't about like, oh my God, like our business, we lost all these sales. Like month of March was rough. People just stopped buying, and we were like, okay, how can we help the community? How can we go out and support? And it was in those moments that we found our most fulfillment. And, because of that, we were actually able to help keep employees on board. And a lot of people don't know this, that I, continue to donate, yes, to give back to the hospitals and continue to give back to the local charities. But it was also a great way to keep us busy enough to keep our employees
100%.
Staffed and on payroll. And there was nothing about it to do it for tax. Not even the freaking slightest concern of mine was a tax write-off. It was about, I have an opportunity right now to serve my community, and I'm going to go do that. And most people, and I'm not trying to put myself in the same boat as Tyler, but like, a lot of successful people do things because that's what they were. They are a servant leader. They're not a greedy, malicious person. They truthfully want to serve the community. And those are the values we need to find in the people we look up to, not to they drive a Bentley. Look at that big house. They drive they're flying in a jet. In 6 months, he's flying in a private jet. I want to follow him. No. In 6 months, that private jet's going to be gone anyways. You want to find the person that's out there serving the community or you're building that generational wealth and talking about those types of things. Those are the characteristics you want to find in a great mentor, great boss, or people around you.
100%. I think whether it's the generational wealth, or even the reputation of your name, it starts putting the value, I think, of your work and your time in things that can't be taken away. Money can always go away, right? Assets, investments, a little bit tougher for them to go away. Your reputation and what your family means is hard. Like you have to mess up multiple times for that name to kind of go down the drain. But I think now it's, especially, I mean, I'm not educated on cryptocurrency, but whatever the currency becomes, you can always rely on assets and you can always rely on your reputation, right? And like as a business or even as an employee, whether say you spend all your money that you've made the past 2 years, but you're still good at your job and you have a good reputation, you can always get that money back. You know, if you do the opposite and rely all on the money, then it's tougher to get it back. You know,
100%, man. And we've stuck on a lot of the past and some great areas, but I do want to get on the current. But you know, one thing, that generational wealth is something that I truthfully think that a lot of people need to, not just wealth, but like, how are you changing your family? Like, how are you changing grandchildren? And it could be education. It could be positioning them through your reputation. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of people, a lot of families we know, but we don't necessarily know them because it's not like the Gallo family here that, you know, okay, financially, yes, but they've done also a lot for the community. They're the largest, I believe, employer here in the center, or in the Modesto. You know, they've done a lot of great things, and their reputation, you know, exceeds outside of just the money that they make. And it's something that if we all start thinking about how are we positioning our families to not have the same life that we have now, that should be the goal of every person, is to put their family in a better position than they were in, 100%. Whether it be financially, educationally, anything. That should be the goal. That should be the goal, in my opinion, for most parents, is to put their children in a better position.
100%. And I think really it stems to I don't have family, so I don't know, but I think a lot of it can stem to like, how do you hold core values, and really, what do you stand for? I mean, you do that in business, like any organization, right? You have your company core values, and you always like, what are our core values? Like, this is what it means to work here, right? This is what we stand for. Like, and I think why the Gallo, I don't, know them personally, and I could just be making this up, but I think part of the reason that maybe they do have success outside of just finances is, I would imagine they have some kind of core values that makes them Gallos. You know, like, this is what we stand for. I remember seeing something at the Gallo Art Center that kind of sparked that idea that, that kind of makes sense. But, you know, I think that would help. Like, you do it for your business. Why wouldn't you do it, at home?
For life.
Like, because you're always going to get kind of knocked off track. Like, that's part of life. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things that aren't who you want to be in the long term. But if you always have something to come back to, like, this is like what it means to be, my last name, or this is what it means to be, Andy. This is what it means to be Andy. You always have something to come back to, like, when things kind of get crazy, and you're just like, this is what holds me true. Same with companies. If your company's starting to, like, not do well and you have your core values, you're like, well, are we staying true to our core values? Like, are we keeping the customer in mind? Like, are we keeping, like, our clients? Are we making them priority? Oh, no. Well, maybe that's why we're struggling with retention, because we're not thinking about the clients enough. We're not treating them well enough. We're too busy prospecting, trying to get new clients, and not giving enough attention to our current clients. You don't know, but it just, at least you have something to hold yourself to.
Yeah. Wow. I'm definitely going to reevaluate everything when it comes to my internal values and all that, and just solidify them. Dude, I've gotten so much from this. Like I said, we're gonna have to definitely do a second podcast. But so let's get into what you're kind of currently doing, because we're already like at.
No worries.
Yeah, hour and a half. So this might still become a two-parter anyways.
Yeah.
So right now, you've obviously done a lot between Gary and then now coming back in the Central Valley. Now you're back here. Mm-hmm. You're working at Visit Modesto, right? What are you doing there for them?
Yeah, so I'm managing their marketing and really just coming up with the strategies and then implementing them to really market Modesto as a destination. Obviously, we had to take a pause with that for a little bit, but really just first starting creating the digital footprint of Modesto for travelers, and then continuing to grow it, because that's really priority number one right now, because we didn't really have much of a digital footprint. So that was job number one, and we want to continue growing that. And then within that, we want to put some programs that really make us really solidify us as like a marketing company. Like, okay, they know what they're doing there. Like, we're doing some cool stuff. So
that's awesome. And so, I mean, obviously this is a challenging time. You got hired right before Corona, right?
Yeah, like about 3 months before.
3 months. Okay. So you got in Corona, you got all these plans, Corona hits.
Yeah.
Have you guys had to pivot your strategies and what you guys do and how you serve the community?
Yeah, 100%. So, really, when I got brought on, this is kind of like my first real job where it's like, okay, I'm in charge of the marketing, like, completely, and not just the digital side. And we had to pivot. I mean, we switched to the main thing we didn't want to do is go dark. A lot of destinations went dark, basically just didn't post anything. We're silent. And we're like, we're not going to do that. We can't promote travel, but what we can do is promote or communicate information to our community and really help out our restaurants and any organizations that need help. So we just went straight informative. We're just going to go informative through our email and through digital ads and through our organic posts. And then really kind of just stay in contact with our partners and see what they need and what we can help out with. Once things started lifting, we went heavy into our restaurants because they could start opening up and things were kind of unsure. So we kind of we just wanted to help them as much as we could. And then our hotels were tougher because with them, it was essential travel for a long time. And then from that, I mean, people don't really want to stay in another place or might be a little more hesitant. So really with them, we just basically started communicating programs to their employees. Like, how do we can't help promote you guys right now, but what we can do is help your staff know of all the programs where they can get help, and then help you guys as hotels know what programs can assist you guys to kind of get you through these times. And it's been stressful. I mean, people are losing. If you own a hotel, you're taking sometimes some of them are taking a huge hit. General managers are under a lot of pressure right now, so we can't talk about what we talk about in our board meetings, but they get interesting sometimes, and we kind of got to remind ourselves that we're all in this kind of together. We're all in the same boat. Like, just as you're concerned about losing your job, like I'm concerned about losing my job, like if things don't get better. So we kind of just all have to kind of be empathetic and know, like, when somebody's kind of lashing out, they're stressed, and don't take it personal. Like, it's just work. I'm sure if you saw it, like, I try to think about it. I'm sure if I saw that person outside of work, they'd be relaxed, and they're just taking out their own stresses. They're not mad at me as a person. They're mad at the situation. Yeah. They're frustrated with that. So it's been interesting, a lot of learning for sure.
I mean, I think obviously I have a little bit more firsthand sight of what you guys do because I live here. Yeah. But I think the restaurant thing has been phenomenal. The whole time you guys have just continued to pivot, and you can tell at what phase of the game you're at, and you're like, okay, so now we're working with restaurants, now we're doing that, and there's been a lot of education, and I think it's one of the coolest things is that some people just try to continue to market their product or whatever they were doing, even though their product wasn't of service then. Yeah. Instead of pivoting to how can we support the greater good, and that philosophy that we're all in this together, because truthfully nobody's in this by themselves. 100%. I know there are businesses being impacted worse, obviously theaters and bars and nightclubs, those guys are being just ravished. I mean, I feel for all business owners, knock on wood, we've been able to remain open even with modifications, but we all needed those extra support. And there's a lot of people that, and I know we talked about this when we were on that Zoom call, is that people just stopped spending ad spend. Yeah. And so if there's a community service organization helping advertise for free for me, hell yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I have so much respect for that because there's a local agency that it's not a marketing agency. Yeah. It's a news agency, and they were like pushing these expensive packages on restaurants when they literally could have done this for free, and it would have been massive value for the community. Yeah. But they thought about it from how can we make money? Yeah. Oh, well, we're giving the restaurants a discount, but you could literally do this for free, and everybody from the consumer to the business benefit massively, and then I might actually be willing to market with you post all this. Yeah, exactly. But because of that, I remember that. Yeah. And I remember when I responded to their email, I was like, hey, have you guys, while that's a cool opportunity, whatever. Yeah. It's not for us. That doesn't work into our marketing strategy. Have you ever thought about doing that for free? Yeah. And they were like, oh, no, we have to make money. It's all, we've got to pay our bills. Yeah. And it's like, well, these guys can't pay their bills. Yeah. And now you're asking them to spend an extra $1,000 a month on your marketing plan that, let's be honest, isn't worth that. Yeah, exactly. When you could have just done maybe even a more watered down version and done something for free. And I think that's going to be something that post all this, we're going to look back at organizations like Visit Modesto and be like, thank you, I appreciate you, and how can we work with you, or how can we collaborate, because we remember when we were struggling and you guys supported us. Yeah. And I think this is a moment that in the tough times we can define ourselves as our core values and what we really stand for. Exactly. And I understand that when money runs out for a lot of people, you get desperate. Yeah. But like you said earlier, like when sales aren't going well, you can look back on your core values and be like, well, are we still staying true to the core values? Yeah. 100%. And I think this is a moment that a lot of people like yourselves, like you and your team there, are showing really what you stand for and who you are and how you're helping the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. I mean, thank you for that. I'm super stoked. I mean, really, it's just awesome to hear that positive feedback. Because like I said, sometimes with those like stressful meetings, it gets stressful. It's stressful times, right? And you start thinking like, man, like are we not providing, we're not providing value, and or maybe it's not consistent, whatever it might be. But I think at the end of the day, like I said, we're a nonprofit. It's not like we're getting pay bumps or bonuses for selling something,
Yeah.
So it's like at the end of the day too, as an overall mission is to make Modesto look appealing, right?
Yeah.
And we're all part of Modesto. So it's like, it's not like we can be like, oh, just our organization looks good and everybody else can kind of bite the bullet, So they just kind of trying to come from that standpoint. And really that's one of the main missions when I came on board was I saw a lot of, at least within the people that I met with, a lot of people not wanting to work together. And I think that there's a lot of talent in our area. And if the more that we work together, the more that the city benefits as a whole,
Collaboration over competition. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's the name of the game. So, well, dude, I think this is a perfect time to wrap it up.
Awesome.
I really wanted to at least talk about what you guys are currently doing, because I do think you guys have made those pivots that even as a nonprofit organization, any business can realize that we need to all try to figure a way to work through this.
Yeah.
And not to go dark, to continue our efforts, whether or not you're in business, you're currently selling anything or not. We got to continue to keep moving forward and communicate and use our platforms for good, even if there's nothing that we can sell.
Yeah,
exactly, just 100%. How can we support somebody? Yeah, I saw something this morning that was like something along the lines of like, if you have nothing to give somebody your support. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's all you can give if you have nothing to give, and that goes such a long way, and it's so appreciated. Yeah. And so I think you guys, Domo, there's a lot of great organizations in Modesto that have really stepped up and said, what can we do to help our community get through this? Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and we all got to get through it together. So
100%. Awesome,
well,
man.
Dude, I appreciate you taking this time, man. I can't wait to re-listen to this, because there's going to be a whole bunch of more stuff that I'm like, dude, podcast number 2, we're going to get into it.
Awesome.
But dude, I would love to have you back, talk more on the just strictly more marketing aspect, because there's a lot more that we didn't get into in the technical how-to stuff. Also would love to get you involved in one of our level up calls where we can specifically be a little bit more targeted on the marketing. But in the meantime, how can people find out more about you? I know you got a private Instagram. But how can people connect with you if they want to ask you questions or just connect with you?
Yeah, they can connect with me on Instagram at Andy P. Mendez. It's private, but
He's the guy with GaryVee and D-Rock following.
Just me running a marathon on there. But I respond to DMs and stuff. I just like to keep I post myself, or even LinkedIn, just Andres Mendez on LinkedIn. Like I said, I'm always checking my messages, and kind of just the more that I can work together with people, the better.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for everything, man.
Thank
you for your friendship. Dude, absolutely. This has been fun unpacking all this. Like I said, I knew about your internship. I didn't know all of the internship, because we've always just talked about, just talking shop. And,
exactly.
So it was cool to learn all that, man. So I appreciate you taking this time, sharing with everybody. Guys, if you like this podcast, make sure you comment below. Let us know what you thought of it. Make sure you rate and review the podcast as well. I'm always so horrible about remembering to do this. So wanted to do it today because this podcast was absolutely fire. So guys, we appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you, Andy, again for taking this time. Definitely, we're going to get you back on. So guys, make sure you tune into next week for the next podcast. Until then, make sure you're leveling up your life, and we'll see you guys next week.